Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the MarquetteHoops.com basketball show with our producer Jason Ruck and the great John Dodds. I'm Tom Pippins. We are brought to you by Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits. Moonlight Graham, a proud sponsor of this program, and we're so grateful to our MVP in that regard, Craig Caston, and also to Jim Sartori, Sartori Cheese. Wonderful to have him with us as well. And John, going down memory lane, another great get by you in terms of a guest for this show.
Yep, today we have Tom Crean. We talk about the run to the Final Four. We talk about the 20-year reunion of the Final Four team. We talk about building the program back in 1999.
I think you'll enjoy it as much as we enjoyed being with him. Going to Dwayne Wade, you saw something special in him. He mentioned the other day, I think when you were back home, he was on the radio with Homer, how, Coach, I was the Prop 48, Coach believed in me, helped me develop on and off the court. And I'll never forget, I may not be able to remember yesterday, Tom, but I can remember the news conference when Dwayne went early to the NBA. And you said, paraphrasing now, you people don't know what a privilege it's been to watch this young man perform. He is going to be great at the next level. We had a show not long ago, Coach, and a scout came up to John and said, I love the way he catches the ball. He'll probably be a good defender, and he'll bounce around. He'll have a 10-year career or something. But you saw greatness, and I think we all thought he would be good, but not that fast. What was it that you saw in this young man from the time you recruited him right through to the Hall of Fame?
Well, never saw that he would be that good that fast in the NBA. I could never say. Now, am I surprised? No, I can't say I'm surprised but I never saw it, right? Like, I thought he'd be an all-star. I thought he would be a really good player, depending on what program he went to. First, him going to the Miami Heat was an absolute godsend because he went to a great place led by Pat Riley. He went to a great development staff with Stan Van Gundy and Eric Spoelstra, who was in the video room at that point, who became a guy that worked with him a lot. He went to the right place. So that helped speed his success up, I think, early on in his career. But the thing that drove him was he had a real built-in chip on that shoulder because he had been doubted. And he had been doubted in his life. He had been doubted in recruiting, doubted coming up the ladder, doubted really a lot of times probably even as a human being and because of his academic situation. And he let that drive him rather than pull him back. And I think, to me, that was a gift, that the humility that he had, the empathy that he has, the way that you could connect with him. And that the more you were around him, the more you realized you wanted him to be more successful than even he did, because you wanted to see him succeed. And I think that's what's been one of his keys to greatness. People want to be around him because he makes them feel better about themselves, because he's got that empathy, because he's got that drive. He understands. That's why he's so endearing as a pro and as a legend and as a businessman and all those type of things, because people can identify with him. They may not be able to identify with his talent. They may be able to identify with his background, but like Dwayne's got a lot of everybody in him because he never tried to be what he wasn't, but he's always worked to become what he dreamed he could be. And I think he had to learn what his dreams were all about at Marquette, because I don't think he dreamed like that. But I think when you get around him, it was such a pull to want to help him be successful because you wanted to see him succeed, because he wanted to see others succeed. And I think that's one of the great endearing qualities and why he's been such a champion too in the NBA, with what he's put together. I would question anybody that would come up to me, and not that they have, but if I ever heard of anybody saying that they didn't enjoy playing with Dwayne Wade in his college or pro career, I'd be way more concerned about them and what they were all about than I would Dwayne. Because for the most part, he made everybody that he was around better because of that work ethic, the drive, the way he treats people. the way he responds, and the way he comes back from adversity and tough times. He always does, and I think that's what you see in him. You root for people like that.
Tom, you would know far better, but I don't think he ever really changed as a young man, did he, through all the successes, even to this day? He just, obviously he's more confident, he's loquacious and what have you, but still the same D. Wade.
That's the thing. The confidence is the thing, guys. I mean, that's what he has now. And it was coming at Marquette, but there was still a long way to go in that, okay? But that's what he has. I mean, as much fun as everybody had that night versus Providence a couple weeks ago, I had a great time. I mean, everybody had a great time. I'm not sure anybody had more fun than him. I mean, I'm not sure it's possible to have more fun than what he had, because he just knows, like, he knows that is such a huge part of his life. He knows those teammates meant so much to him. I mean, he knows the relationships have lasted, and he knows that his life changed, as all our lives changed at Marquette. But he's the one that did it, and he helped change everybody else's life. And I think when he sees his family, his sister there with him, and he brought his dad back this summer, and his mom comes back with him, there's such a pride that he has and what was accomplished there, because he was such a huge part of changing how Marquette basketball was viewed, but it was also such a big part in how he viewed himself. And I think that's why you don't see a change. That is why, you know, as I said to him, and I don't mind saying this, like Deion Sanders had a great line about the Hall of Fame. He said, not everybody's gold jacket is the same. And I told him that sitting there. I said, you know what? I said, not everybody's orange jacket is the same, and yours is going to be a little bit different. You know, and it's hypothetical, obviously, right? But I said, your orange jacket's just going to be a little bit different when you put it on. And I mean, that's what he is. I mean, all the accolades are so well deserved, because he never walked into high school, Marquette, the NBA, any of those things, entitled to success. He really didn't. And I think that's one of the great misnomers that so many people have that don't make it. They feel they are entitled to it, and then there's a bunch of enablers around that will help make them believe that they're entitled to it. Dwayne Wade is none of that. There was never an entitlement. We sure as heck weren't enabling, and look at how it's turned out. And you could say that about that whole team. And that's ultimately, to this day, no matter how many things change with name, image, and likeness, with the transfer portal, with all the things that go on in college sports, that is still how you win. You cannot win being entitled, and you cannot win being enabled. You just can't. You can win some games, but you're not winning battles. You're not winning championships. And I think that's what Dwayne stands for, and that's what some other greats stand for. And there's a big difference between being really good to great, but there's also a big difference between being a great to a champion. And a guy like Dwayne is a champion. I mean, he's an absolute champion, and he's not alone at that level. And I mean, Tom Brady obviously retiring today, he's great. That man is a champion, right? Like there's something different about the champions, and that's what Dwayne is.
I remember interviewing Wade a couple times, well, many times when he was here, but one of the times I had a one-on-one with him, and I said, you know, there's two types of superstars. There's a superstar who, from sixth grade on, everybody's been kind of patting him on the back, telling him how great he is. And then there's a second superstar who's a late bloomer. You seem like a late bloomer. You had to really work hard to get where you are. And it's going to be interesting. I said, do you agree with that? And he said he did. And I said, do you think you're, you know, in that second category? Because yes, I have to work hard for everything I do. And his signature move in the NBA was interesting. It was, he would get the ball out high, and the high pick would come over, and he would then go into the double team, but he would bounce right off of, he was so big and strong that he would bounce right off of the defender who was guarding the man that set the pick. And I was reminded back to the Marquette days when you guys had that drill, where you would have a coach who was guarding the person who set the pick, and he'd have a football pad, and Wade would go and he would just hit him with everything they had, and he would get knocked down and be very frustrated. And then but he got better and better, and pretty soon he didn't get knocked down. And talk about that one move and some of the other things you worked on with him.
Well, I think that's a big part of it, and I've carried that forever. I mean, you see that with Anthony Edwards now in the NBA. He hated that pad. I mean, he hated that pad. Victor Oladipo didn't like that pad, you know, and that's just the guards that didn't like it. Wes Matthews and Jerome McNeil and Dominique James didn't like those pads. But what happened is it made them better because it made them play through contact. And I think in basketball, and one of the fortunate things that we had at Marquette during that time is we had Dwayne Stevens and Darren Horn who could be on the court with them every day practicing, right? So like early on when Dwayne sat out that first year, Darren and DJ were his teammates every day on a scout team, right? So like that's been one of the keys to have players or coaches that could still be physical, make those contacts, things like that with guys. But I think what you do in drills, you know, whether it's with hand pads, whether it's with the body pads, whether it's with a bubble on the rim, whether it's with not having an out of bounds, which we really did not play with an out of bounds back at Marquette. I mean, we really didn't. In that old gym, when we practiced on the road, there was not an out of bounds. And it built a mentality. It just built a mentality. And so when Dwayne gets to the NBA, and Pat Riley and Stan Van Gundy and Eric Spoelstra's practices are about wearing knee pads at practice and at the walkthrough, that's nothing for him because he's been through that, right? And I think what you do is you try to get your guys to understand, no matter what you're doing, you're trying to make it as game-like as possible, right? And it's like I got away early on from, I didn't look at it as drills. I looked at them as game-like actions, right? So like, let's not just do a dribbling drill. Let's have a person have to go around somebody, split a trap, step around somebody, take that hit off the contact, because that's game-like, right? So how could we do game-like actions rather than drills? And there's countless ones. And to me, I think that was important. I think that was really, really important. We would put gloves, old $3.99, $2.99 work gloves picked up at 7-Eleven on our big men to work on them catching the ball, playing through contact, not having somebody be able to strip the ball and go up and score, right? Not shoot jump shots with gloves on, but score. You know what? Our guys rarely lost the ball on the way up. You know, it just builds a mentality. And I think that's what I've always tried to do. That's what we did with those teams. And I think the mentality of not having an out of bounds, the mentality of being really good on the glass, being really good defensively, you know, playing through that contact, help those guys, you know, when things got tight in games.
Wade's coming out party was really the Great Alaska Shootout. He had set out that
Definitely.
year, and I think you had him be an assistant coach at times just to keep him involved during the games and things. But Wade you were able to beat Tennessee, you were able to beat Indiana, and you were able to beat Gonzaga up there, and you won the whole thing. And I remember a couple weeks later, you're playing Louisville in the Bradley Center, and Dick Vitale came to see what all this commotion was about and what all this talk was about, to see if this Wade guy was legit. And there was one play where Wade stole the ball in the Louisville's front court at the free throw line, and he was surrounded by 5 Louisville Cardinals, and they're all trying to trap him. And he dribbled behind his back, between his legs. He slithered through. He drove all the way down and made a layup and got fouled. And I looked across the way, and Dick Vitale's head exploded. He just went, "Oh my God!" I listened to it. This guy! Oh, this is sensational! Oh boy! So he just went nuts on it. And from then on, he was he really came into the fore. And it seemed like whenever he had his turnover, he had 7 or 8 turnovers in a game. He was too anxious to make up for the lost time he had been sitting out the year before.
That's a good point.
He'd always say, "I'm anxious."
It slowed down for him is when he got better. When the game slowed down, when he slowed down, not only did he get better, but then some of his greatest strengths came out. His vision, his poise, and his ability to make a split-second decision late in the decision clock, so to speak, right? Like Like he could hold onto the ball, be in the post, and wait for the guy to get open without panicking. And you saw it countless times the next year with Robert Jackson getting open underneath the basket and down under the backboard area. Because Dwayne built, once his skills developed and once his game started to develop, then all those God-given gifts like that vision and poise started to come out. And early on, he was in a rush. And there were games even when he was getting better that he was in a rush. But he had the ability to get back to where he needed to be. And a lot of that came from pushing him to do that. Some of that came from that year that he was out having to play different positions. But most of it was just those were the gifts that he had that once the fundamentals were there, they just shined. And I think that's some of the reasons that he had such a great NBA career, because he could do things and he could be patient just a little bit longer, and he understood the game and game decisions and things like that at a very, very rare level.
Yeah, he was the guy that he was speaking in front of the graduate class at Marquette last May, and it was pointed out to him that, hey, this is next year. This is the 20th anniversary of your Final Four run, and someone at Marquette told me, he just kind of said, that's been 20 years. He's been so busy he didn't think of it, and he was kind of he was the motivation behind doing all the golf outing, making it. He bought blazers for everyone that were signature blazers. Can you talk about that and how he was behind really the reunions?
Yeah, he really was. There's no doubt about it. We had a great time in August, on the 7th and 8th of August, with a dinner, and Shaka was there, and Shaka and his players were the ones that helped put the coats on everybody, and Shaka had the entire program there. There was a lot of the athletic department, some donors and boosters and alums, and the president and the athletic director, all those different people, but almost our entire team was there with coaching staff. There were a couple of players not there. Jared Seestein wasn't there. Terry Sanders had already had a vacation plan, so he wasn't there, but it was a great time. And those blazers were designed by him, a couple of people at Marquette, a designer, and probably cost more than any suit I wear. So, right, it was like unbelievable to get that. The stitching, the pictures on the inside, the personalization of it, just phenomenal. But it was a great time. I mean, it was a great 2 days. I left before I left when the golf started, and we got back, and then they had a dinner, obviously, that night after the golf. But it was a fantastic thing, and I think it just goes to show that the love he has for Marquette. I think you guys might remember this. It goes all the way back to when he won his first championship. And there was going to be about a 4-day window that he had to get some things done before the season started. And Marquette wanted to utilize him for a campaign, for the university. And he picked a day. There was like a 4-day window. He had some other commercials. He picked a day. The name escapes me of the English teacher that was there, but he had the teacher come out. They did the ads because this was a lady that pushed him in the direction of reading. It was a lady that gave him confidence. It was a class that he enjoyed. And that became part of the ad campaign for Marquette. And it goes all the way back to that. I mean, he never, ever stopped loving or appreciating Marquette. And I think that says worlds about him. I mean, it just coming up at the drop of a hat and being a part of it. And he was always like that. And that just goes to show who he is.
When you look back, people don't realize on the face how young that team was. You only had one senior on that Final Four team. That was Robert Jackson. You had the two juniors, Merritt and Sanders. And then Wade was really a redshirt sophomore, and Diener was a sophomore. Townsend was a sophomore. Then you had some key freshmen, Novak, Chapman, Kayron Bradley, and I think Chris Grimm was in that class too. So talk about the development of that team. I know Rick Majerus had seen you play. His mother had breast cancer that year, and he took a year off from Utah, and he asked you if he could hang around the old gym, and you graciously allowed him to do that. And he was looking at that team with Jackson and Wade and Diener, and he sent a real nice note to Father Wild saying, this could be a Final Four team. There's something really special here.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. I loved having him around, and when you could pick his brain, it was like paying for a master class clinic, but and not having to pay. But what's interesting? That spring, and you guys will remember this. We had a couple of transfers. Odarte Blankson, we had just voted captains or named captains, I guess. Maybe I named them, and we had 4 captains, and Odarte was one of them. And a couple weeks later, he decided to transfer, as did Ron Howard and as did Kevin Menard. And so, like, I was uptight that spring. I knew we had good players. I didn't know if we had enough, right? I didn't know we had enough guys. And we added some walk-ons. We had a really good spring of getting better. We had a great summer, and we were together most of the summer. But that team, you could start to see that the bonds were real. And we just took it for granted, right? Because I was coming from Michigan State with Tom Izzo and how those teams were built on camaraderie and closeness. And we were building that at Marquette. And the more the latter, the more you realize that is the secret sauce of all of this. I mean, it really is. Talent's important. Skill level is important. Size is important. Depth is important. But the quality of the chemistry is what drives it. That is what gives you the edge. That is what puts you over the top in a close game. Obviously, you got to make shots. Well, you've got to be connected enough to get to that place. So what happened is that team found different ways to bond through the hard work, through me and us pushing them, through never being satisfied. And in turn, I think those guys developed that kind of mindset because they were outstanding people and they were well raised. And in many, many cases, they were really well coached coming up the ladder, but they were young, right? They were young. So you had to go through adversity together. And again, we had guys that looked out for one another and could help each other through the tough times. And like I said, we had guys that could forgive each other. And that meant the quicker you forgave, the better and quicker that you became close again and you worked on the next task. And they bought into that. They bought into every individual workout. They may not have liked it, but they bought into it. They bought into the hard practices. They may not have liked it, but they bought into it. And then I think what happens, John, with all of them is because of that mutual respect, everybody starts to believe that they have a spot, that they have a role, that they can do something when called upon. And if you look back at our Final Four run, Steve Novak in the Missouri game, Joe Chapman, Karen Bradley, Chris Grimm, they all had moments in the Final Four. It wasn't just Steve's tremendous shooting and the way that he played. It was Joe, Karen, and Chris, not to mention the other guys, all the older guys that you mentioned that had incredible runs for us. And we had guys that bought in. We had the same starting lineup the entire year. And Terry Sanders was the first off the bench. So we had a starting 5, we had a 6th man, and we had 3 freshmen that really, really bought into getting better. And then certainly we had a star in Dwayne and in Travis that could make everybody better with their passing, with their ability to get guys easy shots, and at the same time they were high-level scorers themselves. But this team was so unique in the protection of one another too. Scott Merritt could protect Rob Jackson on the floor defensively, where Rob Jackson was such a force down low that would free Scott up, maybe where he would have a better matchup or he might be able to get something done quicker. Travis and Dwayne could hold each other in check. There was just so much, the way that chemistry formed had everything and as much to do with anything that we accomplished that year.
Yeah, that was, the team started off with some losses early. You lost, might have been 3 in a row or 3 right up front. You lost to Dayton, which ironically Shaka Smart mentioned because this week he said he was the video coordinator for the Dayton team. It was his first job in D1 coaching in 2002, I think it was. So you lost at Dayton, you lost at Notre Dame, and you lost at East Carolina. And then it seemed like Travis Diener he was the first one I noticed. He took the next step where he was a good point guard. He was a great point guard.
Well, those were the hard forming days. The game that will stand out to me that year was going to St. Louis. because we were reeling a little bit, and we were not playing that well. Rob Jackson was not playing that well. I don't think Steve Novak had been in double figures yet. We go into St. Louis, and I've been extremely hard on that team, and very challenging to them. After Notre Dame was at a different level, with being tough and demanding, and they responded to that, right? Because you have a responsibility. You not only have a responsibility to help everybody in your program, coach, player, whoever it is, become as great as they can be, right? Like, that's why you push and drive, right? That's what I had done for me by Ralph Willard and Tom Izzo and my high school coaches, Denny Kuiper, and my coach at Alma College, Ralph Pym. And that's how I was going to coach, because that's what you do. You bring the best out of everybody. And if that's hard, it's hard, but you have the right intention for them. Well, the bottom line for us was different. There was something unique about this team that if we got that level of toughness and we got that level of confidence from that toughness, then we were going to have a chance to be really good, right? And the season started with a Villanova win at Madison Square Garden. We won the game, but we knew we had to get better. We knew we would have to improve throughout the season. At least I knew that. And that St. Louis game was a real turning point. I think Dwayne got hurt in that game a little bit, missed some time in that game, if I remember correctly. Rob played well. Steve had 10, hit a couple of threes, and we win in a very tough environment. But there's always those games that were a driving force in what you accomplished later on down the road. And that St. Louis game was one of those games for us, and there's so many during the year. And a game at Cincinnati, the win at the end of the year at Louisville after being down 19. When you find a way to overcome things inside of a game, it just builds an incredible confidence for you. Well, maybe we don't beat Louisville at Louisville, okay? Maybe we don't win some of these games, all right, if we don't win a game like that against St. Louis, right? And to me, those are the kind of things that something's always setting you up for the next thing. And you've got to be able to stay on top of it the best that you can. And this team was able to do that.
Thank you so much, Tom Crean. Brought to you by Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits, proud sponsor of the MarquetteHoops.com basketball show, and Sartori Cheese. Jim Sartori, we appreciate you coming off the bench and being in the game with us as well. It's been an absolute delight. And John, you've got a super website as we promote this show and promote your passion, Marquette basketball.
We have a Marquette basketball recruiting site, MarquetteHoops.com. It's part of the CBS network, CBS Digital, 24/7 network. And if you'd like to be on our free newsletter, we kept abreast of future guests. Please drop your email down. You have to do it twice. I've been told that it doesn't work the first time, but we're fixing that, so drop it twice. And we'll archive some of our top shows at the site.
Well, Shaka Smart and company doing just great. Couldn't get any better. So for our producer, Jason Ruck, and John Dodds, I'm Tom Pippins. God bless everybody. See you next time, and go Golden Eagles.